steaming water.
Away from my hot steaming water?
Yeah.
Oh, I would rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
Huh?
Rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
You better not. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop the pot! Drop the pot! Drop the fucking pot!
19 shots fired.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Drop the pot! Bring EMS now. We got a headshot wound to the female. Headshot wound to the female. 1078.
Welcome back to Internal Affairs, a police podcast here with the IA guy. Today, another special guest, Ken Roybal. Before we get into getting to know Ken a little bit, the reasons why we're doing this particular breakdown of this incident with the Massey officer-involved shooting. This involves Officer Grayson. If you're familiar with it, it's gone viral. It's a hot topic. It happened in the state of Illinois. This particular officer, as a result of his actions, ended up getting charged with first-degree murder. So here's the deal. Let's watch a little bit of the clip. And after that, we'll get Ken on. And we're actually going to be hitting it from a different angle and talk about the background process and also the duty to intervene. Take a look.
That's not your black car, though. The SUV? Whose is it? You don't know? Someone just parked it in your driveway?
Mm-hmm. They brought it to my driveway.
And just left it?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Your ID. One task at a time. So let's do an ID, and then you can dig around for your paperwork.
I don't know where my ID is.
You
Is it in that stack right there, maybe?
check on her.
Let me get this.
We don't need a fire while we're here.
Right. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Where you going?
Huh?
Where you going?
Away from your hot steaming water.
Away from my hot steaming water?
Yeah.
Oh, I would rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
Huh?
Rebuke you in the name of
You better not. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop the pot! Drop the pot! Drop the fucking pot!
19 shots fired.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Drop the pot! Bring EMS now. We got a headshot wound to the female. Headshot wound to the female. 1078.
I was on. I'm gonna go get my kit.
No, headshot, bitch. You're done. You can go get it, but that's a headshot. God damn it.
God.
Dude, I'm not taking boiling water in the head. And look, it came right to our feet, too. God damn it.
God damn it.
You good?
I'm good. You good?
Yeah, I'm good. What's your got? Let her just...
God.
There's nothing we can do, man. You good? Alright. Well, I mean, what else do we do? I'm not taking hot boiling water to the face, and it already reached us.
They got a 52 en route?
Yeah, 1078.
Okay, Code 6 with Ken Roybal. Hey, you know what, bro? You and I know Code 6.
Mm-hmm.
I asked my guests, you ever wonder why everybody uses the 10 code and we're the only ones that use, like, codes?
I was just talking to someone the other day about that. They were saying, like, what do you say? What code do you use when you go to the station? I go, hey, so I'm out to the station. It's called
That's
plain
simple,
English.
Right? Exactly. Hey, 16 Adam 25, I'm clear.
What do you need to know?
What else? Exactly. We're 10-8. I always wonder about that. And, one day I'll do a, I know, again, you've been on the job. Well, hold on a second here, because you did 23 years. I did 24. But, man, you've been retired for over 20 years, bro. And I applaud you for still doing what you do. We're going to get to know you a little bit better later on. But you know what? Let's get right into this because, again, me personally, I shouldn't say a problem. I just kind of, I don't know, it maybe rubs me the wrong way when we start having these police podcasts and start breaking down whether it's justified or not of the actions of Officer Grayson. So we're going to leave that on the shelf, if you will, and talk to me about, just in general, before I actually get into the case, talk to me about the background process, because you've been doing backgrounds. We talked about this. You did 4 years as a sworn. This is your full-time job in LAPD.
Right.
And you've been doing it 12 years as a civilian, and you're still doing backgrounds. So tell me, man, look, this guy got 6 jobs in 4 years, and he was dishonorably discharged from the Army. Talk to me, man. What's the process like? And when you turn in your background packet, what happens after that?
Well, before we even get started with that, I will say this. I'll preface it with this, and then we can follow your lead.
Uh-huh.
This guy, beginning with the very first police department he got hired at, he should have never been hired.
Okay.
Period. The issues with, background investigations are, everybody will remember their background investigation. You say, what happened with your medical? I don't know. What happened at your oral? I don't know. But they say, my background investigation, it took months and months and months. And they asked me tons of questions about, it's very invasive.
Yes.
And they went into everything. And so people ask me, how far back do I have to go in my background investigation? I tell them, well, usually you start remembering life about 4 or 5 years old.
Yes.
That's how far back you got to go, because they're going to ask you everything. And that's why the background investigation is important. It's the most invasive, intimidating process you will ever go through in any application process. Yeah. So if you can pass a good background investigation, there's a possibility that, you'll get hired.
Let me ask you this just in general, because this is what I was told my first day of orientation before I actually started the Los Angeles Police Academy back in 1998. The person who was in charge said, hey, all of you candidates, please stand up. And we did. And I remember them saying, this is 1998. Now, you've been doing this longer. You were probably, you know, you were in the office. You didn't do maybe you did my backgrounds. I don't know. But I was told, and I'll never forget this quote, out of 1,000 applicants a month, they only pick the best 5%. Out of the 5%, you pick the best 50%. Out of the 50%, you pick the 50%. And guess what? They'll leave you with 10. And out of the 10, about maybe 4 or 5 actually make it. So congratulations for going through a very extensive background. And I made it, And so it goes to the evasiveness and how serious this is to go all the way back. Let me ask you, is it still that way, just in general? I know applicants, it's not 1,000 a month. I mean, do you concentrate or focus a lot in Los Angeles, or is it everywhere in your business?
I do consultations for people who want to join police departments from all over the nation and Canada. They're basically all the same. The difference is the standards.
Okay.
Is it the same as it was when you went through? No.
Got it.
Police departments are hurting. Standards have changed. You went through it in time when LAPD backgrounds were super, super serious. Okay. You could not look wrong and pass. It was so difficult back then. But you went through a very difficult time to get on the job. And so times have changed a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. And can you kind of let the audience know what are some red flags as it relates to this particular incident? Because we'll get into the incident, but here you are, you're doing your investigation, you're gathering all this information, that's all this evidence, if you will, because you are an investigator, and it reveals certain red flags. I'll give you one right off the bat that people always talk about is DUI. Sometimes I even get a call and say, hey, Marlon, you know what? I got a DUI. What do you think? Should I still continue with the process? And I've heard rumors and stories about, hey, you got to wait like a couple of years, or some, are lenient. I mean, what's the deal with the DUIs?
The DUI, the rule for DUI is that you had to have at least 3 years distance from the conviction or the end of probation.
Okay.
So you could get popped for a DUI and still be a cop.
Okay.
But there's there's little particulars about that. For instance, if someone gets popped for a DUI, comes in after 3 years and wants to be a cop, the background investigator should sit down with them and say, okay, so you learned your lesson, you got DUI, you got convicted, blah, blah, blah. And now when you go to dinner, do you drink now? Do you have a drink, like even one drink? And if the person says, oh yeah, I have one drink in it, so you haven't learned your lesson. You got popped for DUI, driving under the influence, and you still go out and drink. That's a red flag.
Right.
This guy had 2 DUIs. So you've got 2 DUIs, you've got 2 misdemeanor convictions because he copped out to both of them.
Right. And paid a fine.
And paid a fine. So now we have 2 misdemeanor convictions. DQ.
Yeah. And, okay. Automatic DQ. Let me ask you this, and I know we talked about this before we started the episode. We were chatting about your job as a background investigator. Does at any point do you give advice as to whether or not you should continue with this process and get hired, or how does that work? In other words, it's your product. I know when I was in internal affairs and you know, there's border rights hearings, you bring in the IO, because the IO is pretty much owns this entire matter, right? And so I'll never forget, a lot of times the board members will ask the IO while they're testifying, hey, were you the one that actually framed these allegations? And sometimes, believe it or not, they'll say, well, I turned it in 7 months ago, and I wasn't the one responsible for this false statement allegation. Why? Because we wait until the 364th day, to serve the actual accused employee. And the IO turned it in 7 months before that. So you own it as a background investigator. Do you, in your experience, do you often get asked hey, Ken, what do you think, man? You think we should hire this guy or not?
The background investigator should have a really big say-so on whether somebody should pass their background or not. They're the ones who know the background. They know the background. They know the candidate better than anyone. In fact, they know the candidate better than the parents, sometimes the spouses. They know them better. They've gone through their entire life in detail. The candidates tell the background investigators stuff that they don't want anybody to know.
Right, right.
And so do they know the candidates enough to say whether I don't think this is a good background or not? Yeah. The problem is it depends on the agency. Some agencies, LAPD, used to have a little blurb at the end of the summary that said, hey, I do not recommend this person for hire.
Okay.
And then no matter what, the case managers, the bosses, the backgrounds, they go, yeah, the background investigator doesn't think that this person should be hired. We're going to give that a lot of weight. Some agencies nowadays, LAPD does not want the background investigator's opinion.
Got it. Now, do you think that's because, I suppose from a liability lens, hey, we hired him, and then next thing you know, something bad happens, like this incident, and they'll look at the backgrounds and say, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. The background investigator has a little checkbox here that says that they didn't recommend him to hire. That could be a reason, right? Liability, CYA, if you will.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, if something happens with an officer that's a high-profile thing, like, for instance, the Christopher Dorner thing.
Correct.
The first thing they do is they go to backgrounds and pull the file to see if the background unit screwed up. They want to blame somebody, so the background investigator is a good thing. And that's why background investigators are adamant. If they try and tell them, I need you to change this. We want to hire this guy. I want you to change your summary. No, I'm not going to do that, because that happens.
I was going to say, has that been your experience?
Yeah. And so from agency to agency, it changes. But there are some agencies that it's up to the chief. It's whoever's in charge.
Right.
And they can totally ignore the background investigator.
Right. So, which leads me to my next question is, has there been situations in your experience where you recommended not to hire, but then again, it is a recommendation only, and they said, okay, thanks, Ken, and they went ahead and hire?
Yep. Happens all the time.
You think it happens more often now than it did before in my times?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. A lot of people don't know this. Going back to that Dorner case, Dorner was a DQ by the background investigator. Personnel sewed his head back on.
Wow. You know, you and I can have we can have a whole episode about that. And which, since you bring it up, I'm still waiting for a guest to come talk about the actual border rights hearing where he was found guilty on a false statement. We can't do that yet because I'm still trying to get a hold of the board members, even if they decide to do it. But that's a really good conversation because you're right. Everybody knows about the Dorner incident, but what they don't know is behind the curtains, which is what you just brought up. I didn't know that either, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. So let me ask you this, man. Let's get right into this. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit. So here you are with 6 jobs. Now, my understanding is those 6 jobs is because he had a couple of temporary jobs. I guess in the state of Illinois, it wasn't like a full-time job. It was like a part-time job, and he's trying to be a full-time police officer. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. Yeah, it happens all the time. There's guys that have part-time jobs and stuff. It doesn't matter for the background. Because if they're going to go out there part-time, do the same job as a full-time officer, the background's the same. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I tend to think that you're talking about, okay, so let's just say it is a part-time job, 6 different agencies. Would it be fair to say, and I guess I'm speculating here, that those 6 agencies kind of shared this background packet?
No, it would be it should be a completely separate background for each agency because they've got the liability for hiring the person.
Right. Now, so let's just go with that. If it's different background for each one, is there any checks and balances with the prior to see if there's any inconsistencies? Does that happen, or?
Yeah, they should be. They should be calling up the background investigator. The minimum for contacting a background unit, if a person fills out an application and they say, yeah, I filled out an interest card and then I sent it in and didn't hear anything, background investigators aren't going to care about that. Did you fill out an application, a PHS? I'm calling that unit. Did you have a background investigation? I'm calling that unit.
Yeah.
Because I want to hold my application from the candidate and find out what yours looks like. I'm going to go do an in-person visit and compare the two.
Yeah, no.
At the minimum.
Yeah, at the minimum, totally. One thing that hasn't been covered, and maybe if you've experienced this or maybe if you've heard, you and I also talked about, look, there's a negligent hiring theory that I remember when I took my TOR class in law school. Of course, I always think, how come we don't I never hear about a civil suit for negligent hiring. What's that all about? And have you heard or seen situations in your experience where obviously there's liability on the chief because the chief is the one who actually signs all this paperwork, but can you talk a little bit about that and share?
I haven't seen anything like you say. I haven't seen anything come of it. But what if a department blatantly drops the ball? This case that we're talking about today, in my opinion, blatant negligent hiring. You had nobody from the very first department had no business hiring this guy.
Yeah, no, totally. You know what? Just like a quick rundown. So in negligence, you have duty breach, cause, and damages, right? So do you have a duty to make sure that who you're hiring is of sound mind? I suppose no record, clean, even if you had a record. Let's just go with a DUI that happened 10 years ago, whatever the circumstances is, you just say this person, you know what, is good to go, right? However, you breach that duty. Why? Because you have 2 DUIs of a conviction that paid a fine. So that in it itself, you kind of lack some judgment. You use poor judgment. Would be one way of looking at it. And of course, I don't know anything about Officer Grayson besides the fact that maybe, and again, I'm speculating here and I hate to pass judgment, but maybe there are some temperamental issues. Maybe there is a psych issue. Maybe there was a polygraph. I don't know all that. But what really sticks out the most is that and the dishonorable discharge from the Army. Talk to me about that because I was in the Navy and I know I got an honorable discharge, and I remember my background investigator or the rumor around in 1998 was, man, if you're in the military and you got an honorable discharge, you're looking good. What's your thoughts about military background?
Well, the DD-214s, it's all kind of mysterious. The DD-214, the reenlistment codes, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
You can look at that stuff up all day and still not know. You could ask military people, what does this mean? I don't even know, because it's just very generic.
Yeah.
And so it's contingent upon the background investigator finding out from the candidate and then looking at the military records to see if, you have to put this puzzle together. Yeah. Why did you leave after a very short amount of time, not finish boot camp or whatever?
Right.
Why is this discharge due to misconduct, serious misconduct? Yeah. Why is that? What did you do? You weren't even in for a year. What could you have possibly done to get kicked out of the military?
Yeah, no, that's
a red flag, Marlon. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag. Totally, man. Well, look, you know what? I appreciate sharing this really important conversation that needs to be had. I hope other police podcast hosts and guests really start honing in on the negligent hiring theory, if you will. But talk to me, man. Let's see. I gave you away already. 23 years, 21 years as a retiree. You're enjoying it. I'm jealous, man. I only got 2 years. I got to catch up to you. Talk to me. What do you got going on? I know you have your own consulting business. Where can I get a hold of you? Let them know.
Yeah, you can find me at the policebackground.net. I have a consulting business where I still help candidates get hired on the job. Sometimes their applications are messed up, and I help them put them back together. I go through their entire background with them, tell them what the red flags are, what they need to do to fix it. And a lot of times candidates come back and say, hey, I used everything you said, and I got hired. Also co-host the Police Applicant Podcast. Every 2 weeks we pump out episodes. We're in season 4.
Okay.
And just keep plugging at it, man. Yeah. Trying to help candidates get hired.
Yeah. I'm expecting an invite. Aren't we supposed to do one of these?
We did. You were a guest on my podcast. That's already.
Right. Yeah. But don't you have something else that I need to be appearing on?
Yes. We're going to be doing a live episode on YouTube on IA, and let people come in and go, Marlon, what is up, man? I hate IA and all that kind of. We're going to do all that.
More reasons to have an internal affairs podcast. Hey, Ken, thank you so much for everything. Look, before I leave, and I know I kind of touched on this, and I got to put my glasses on for this one because it's on the phone here. Just quick thoughts, and I know you're a background guy, but look, man, would you agree with me, and this is just me, but a duty to intervene, bro? I mean, look, it's a law, it's a statute here in the state of California. The state of Illinois, and I'm reading it here, it says a duty to intervene. Basically, Section 7-16, duty to intervene, a peace officer, right? This is what it says about the opportunity to intervene. Here it is. Shall have an affirmative duty to intervene to prevent or stop another peace officer in his or her presence from using any unauthorized force or force that exceeds the degree of force permitted, if any, without regard for chain of command. Just in general, and again, I don't want to pass judgment on the partner. I don't know all the circumstances. You and I can agree to that. I'm not going to sit here and be the that Monday, that Monday morning. It's Monday afternoon here. Quarterbacking and passing some, being very critical about the partner's action. But to me, it stands out. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and that's a big deal nowadays. Like California. LAPD back in the day used to have a duty to report misconduct observed.
Absolutely.
And now California's come in and say, hey, if your partner is using force that they shouldn't, you have a legal criminal liability to report this. And
absolutely. Yeah,
that's
part of the law,
cop, right?
Yeah, and then you and I both know this, Senate Bill 2, and we can talk about this in your live episode in IA. Part of what we call the 9 deadly sins, the 9 definitions of serious misconduct defined by California Post. One of those deadly sins is the duty to intervene. However, the language of that, which is still very ambiguous, is the fact that if you arrive at scene and you see a partner using, in other words, they have to be in the act of using force. If you feel as though it's excessive, whatever you deem to be excessive, you have a duty to intervene, where the one you're talking about, the legal, is actually if it's a bad idea and if you arrive at scene, if Ken and I arrive at scene and there's this OIS about to go down and here comes whoever to give planning, you got this command and control, the sergeant is known as the incident commander, and he comes up with this really effed up plan, you and I have a duty to say, hey, you know what, Sarge, with all due respect, that's not the way it's going to go down. And, you know, I'm all for it. Look, I wish the best. I'll say this like always, and I know you can agree to this, is that an incident like the Massey officer-involved shooting, along with Officer Grayson and the partner, nobody wins whatsoever. There is no winning in this. Everybody is impacted by the results of this fatal shooting. The community is, you know, up in rage. Police departments are just like, I can't believe this happened. And so all we're trying to do is just get some lessons learned, and perhaps there's something to be said about the background process, which I think is very, very important, because one is going to be questioning, you know, why do we hire this guy? You know, and I think that's very important. Any parting thoughts?
I also want to mention that when I first said that this guy shouldn't have been hired in the first place, the military record, the 2 DUIs, he should have been not hired by the first department. Then you get to the second department, third department, fourth department, fifth department, by the sixth department where this happened, he had misconduct at another agency where he was going over 110 miles an hour in a play pursuit, hit a deer, and was supposed to go to some training, but he left. And so there's all these red flags prior to the department that this shooting occurred at.
Yeah.
The very first, he should have never been hired, Marlon.
Yeah, no, totally. Ken, man, good seeing you, bro.
Yeah. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. We'll get to know you a little bit better later on in another episode, but I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy dude, and let's keep in touch, bro.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care, bro. Good to see you. And on that note, like always, please be safe out there, and don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.